Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, May 2nd, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
And I'm Eklund, and you're listening and watching the HockeybuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that Mike and I and friends, Josh, Julie, other friends, get together every day around this time to discuss what's happening in the world of hockey and the world of other things as well, of course. And today we are very, 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 very blessed to have one of my favorite people in this sport, a person who agrees with me that the Flyers intro music sucks more than any other during the warm-ups. From Sportsology, actually the man at Sportsology, Russ Cohen. Hey, Russ.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I totally agree about the music. It's horrendous.
We were cracking up in the press box. We were basically trying to talk to each other. It was so loud. We're like screaming to each other, and saying this couldn't possibly be the Fly, and that the Flyers do actually pick it out themselves. My joke. Isn't that ridiculous?
I can't believe it because it's nothing you would pick out. I remember I had somebody put their phone out there and search the song because I never heard of it, and it was like somebody named Nero, and I'm like, I don't know who Nero is.
No.
And another place I'm hearing 30 Seconds to Mars, at least music I like.
I know, and the fans at the end of it, instead of like that normal, like at the end of a warm-up when you get like the anticipation and people are like, oh, this is going to be good. The people are skating off and you would hear the clapping. Instead, the fans are just exhausted by this music. Like, that's my theory. They're just standing there motionless like they're in a Love the Monkey, Touch the Monkey Saturday Night Live video waiting for this thing to end. So anyway, that's my little mini rant. But Russ and I had a blast. Russ is amazing. He does so many things. He's not only the head of Sportsology where you write not just about hockey but other sports as well. But you also are a host on XM's Prospect Radio Show, right?
Yep.
And also the author of 100 Greatest Rangers, which talks about the people who have guided Yosemite for years, Yellowstone, the best Rangers. Sorry, that was a joke.
I was getting that.
Thanks, Russ. I appreciate it.
Yogi Bear was number one on that list, right?
But Russ covers the Flyers and he covers the Rangers in person quite often. So we're gonna get right into it, Russ. We've already talked about the Flyers Rangers series, so we don't have to go into that. Of course, that's past history. What do the Rangers have to do? Is this something that you can see this team pulling off?
I think they're going to lose in 7. I think a couple of things are going to come in play. I think McDonough is still semi-banged up. Brassard definitely. His back is definitely hurting him. He's not scoring at the same clip. They're getting some great goaltending that could still improve. Lundqvist could definitely get a shutout in a game. I don't think he could get more than that. He could definitely have a 1 or a 2 goal game, and I think that would extend the series to some degree. But at the end of the day, they still don't match up great against Pittsburgh. I think they match up better than they have in the past because their defense is a little better. They've got the three-headed defenseman and McDonough and Girardi and Stahl. But I still think that people are exaggerating Marc-Andre Fleury's hiccups, and I think to the point where they make it seem like he can't even play. And what I was saying the other night at the Flyers game was he's at home watching. So for as much trouble as he had, their team, when they were up 3-2, managed to put the opponent away. They put the Jackets away. So I still think they're better than what people are giving them credit for.
I'm with you on that. I do agree with you on that. And actually, I think that he played pretty well in the first round. Honestly, I mean, it's obvious to point to that one game and the mistake he made, but I would have gone behind the net too if I thought Letang was going to get the puck. That's all I can say, from my perspective.
So yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, Letang has been way worse. I mean, Letang has been horrible. The Penguins' defense is really questionable. Bylsma, I mean, Mike, we've talked about this, but Bylsma is, I think still not out of the woods here, Mike.
Well, I think he probably has to win this round to lock himself in for next year. And there's a sentiment in Pittsburgh that if they lose or lose badly. If he would have lost to Columbus, I think he definitely would have been fired. And now, if they go 7 games, maybe he gets to stay, maybe he gets to go. But there's something there that there's a wave there that possibly, if they don't have some success, that it's time to make a change. I think the key to this series, similar to the key with Rangers in Philadelphia, is the fact that I think the Rangers have more depth up front than Pittsburgh does. I mean, for most of the year, Pittsburgh has been playing a bunch of glorified AHL players on their third and fourth lines. Craig Adams is a pretty good defensive forward, but guys like Bo Bennett, Tanner Glass, I don't have a lot of respect for. I think that's an advantage where the Rangers have guys like Dominic Moore, who played very well in the first series. Brian Boyle is a big presence. I think that is an advantage. I think it's going to go 6 or 7 games. But unless Sidney Crosby is more hurt than a lot of people suspect, and he didn't score didn't score a goal in the entire series against Columbus, I think Pittsburgh will win probably in 7 games, like Russ said.
Yeah, it's not just that he didn't score. I mean, Russ, to me, he played with way less emotion. And I wonder if it's from the Olympics and all that. He's been up and down so often this year, but it just wasn't there. It was almost like he was already bored of these playoffs.
Maybe, but I think the reception that he'll get when he goes to MSG will wake him up. Or even some of the Ranger road fans that'll be there tonight, I think, will wake him up. I think some of the negative signs, he's going to start coming across a lot of that. Now, whether it was the Rangers or the Flyers, that part of his psyche was going to be tested, and so now that might just wake him up. I will say one thing, too. Bo Bennett, I have a lot of respect for him. I actually think he's a player that's getting better. I think he's just playing with some less talented players, but this is a guy who's really got a lot of puck skills and good size. He wouldn't shock me if he started to play better in these playoffs.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on him too. But I would trust you. I mean, Russ is, by the way, for those watching. I mean, there's no one who knows prospects like the man you're in the baseball hat there. I mean, this guy knows these guys like no one's business. What is it actually?
USA Hockey.
Very nice, very nice. Not as cool as my Gong Show hat over here with a bear playing hockey in Canada, but pretty cool. So
trying to get the sunlight to work here, but it's like
okay. It looks like you're in some sort of heavenly waiting place. Yeah, I know exactly. All right, so that I just faded out for a second. Sorry, my whole screen went black for a second. It's Friday, so that kind of stuff happens. Where were we? So the games that these teams have played this year, Russ. Basically 2-2. They each split. They each won 1 game in a shootout. They each won 1 game in regulation. They each won 1 game basically 5-1. I mean, so the 1 game they won, and they each won in the shootout 4-3. So it's been very even. What have you seen in the games that these teams have played? Are we going to see a different kind of series than we saw against Philly, or are we going to see more of what the Rangers want to do, basically?
I think a little different series. I already saw that the Rangers coaching staff pulled an all-nighter. And and I don't get the sense that they did that against Philly. Maybe they did, but they didn't talk about it. Right. So clearly they know they're facing a different team, and I think the tempo is going to even get faster. I think they knew against Philly they didn't have to play their fastest tempo, but they played up-tempo. They would give the Flyers problems because their defense is a little slow, and they did. Now, switching over to Pittsburgh, even though we might say Pittsburgh's defense isn't great, Letang and Martin, they could skate. So their tempo is a lot faster. And so I think now they're going to change it up a little bit and try and keep up with them. And they're going to still try and get in the shooting lanes of at least Crosby. I don't think you could ever shut down Crosby and Malkin. So I think they'll do the same thing they did to Giroux and at least try and take Crosby out of it and then see where they are after that.
So what, in your opinion, as far as, Russ, one more question for you real quick on this part. A lot of people were kind of dissing Lundqvist in the first round, saying he wasn't spectacular. I kind of thought he won Game 3, in my opinion. Actually, I thought he was really good in that game. I didn't think he was that bad at all. You see him all the time. Where do you think he's at with his game right now?
I think he's at like 75 to 80% of greatness. I don't think he is quite lights out, and I don't think he's quite as bad as some people are saying. Also, I think there's a lot to be said, like in games that the Rangers were clearly behind in, other than the 4-1 where he just was terrible, he was holding a minute too. He did make some great saves with the team behind, and I think that sort of gets overlooked. The last game, he was great until the third period, and then we did see a little shakiness creep in, and maybe that was because he was screaming at Anton Strawman for basically the puck right in front of the net, and that's unlike Lundqvist to do that, but he did it.
Right.
And so at the end of that game in the locker room, he was more worn out than usual. He almost looked as worn out as he was in the shootout loss when he was injured against the Flyers when they didn't make the playoffs. It just seemed like he was emotionally drained, and it took him a few more minutes to do his interview than it normally does. And so I sort of looked at that and said, the Flyers series definitely took a little toll on everybody on the Rangers, and Lundqvist included.
Interesting. Mike, you have a thought there?
Well, on the Pittsburgh page, I think we're not sure how serious Orpik is hurt, whether he'll play. I've heard speculation he may be out for a couple games. I've heard speculation he's going to be out for the series. He might even play tonight. I mean, you know how it is when it comes to playoffs in terms of the games that people play.
I think, Mike, just stop you for a second and continue. I don't think Orpik's been very good when he has played. So I don't think it really matters much.
Well, if it's a question of a Brooks Orpik at 50% or putting a guy like Robert Bortuzzo, I think that they would rather opt for the experience of Orpik. But that being said, Bilesma's got to come up with a little more of a tactical advantage than slapping together Malkin and Crosby and throwing all his eggs in one basket, because that tactic essentially won him the series against Columbus. I don't think that in and of itself is going to work to beat the Rangers. They're going to have to get offense from at least a couple lines. They have to get James Neal to score more. They need Stempniak and Kunitz to be able to produce with Crosby. They need some production out of their third and fourth lines, and they need guys like Letang, and Martin's has 8 assists, so you can't really criticize him for anything. But Oli Mata, who's a rookie, to produce a little more offense on the back end. If they're going to win, they need the entire team to produce and not just a couple players.
Yeah.
Mike, I got a question for Mike, if it's okay. The team looked faster and maybe better without Brooks Orpik? Is Orpik becoming a dinosaur, and is he going to be a detriment, perhaps?
Well, I mean, he's never been the quickest guy, but yeah, I mean, he's in his early 30s. He's beginning to slow down. I think in terms of putting him together with a guy like Mata and letting Mata carry the puck and him being the guy who stays back, that's something that I think probably Bilesma would feel comfortable with him doing, and that would be a benefit for them. Just like Scuderi. I mean, I think Scuderi is a benefit to that team as a stay-at-home defenseman who allows a guy like Letang to take more forays offensively into the zone. That I don't know a lot about Bortuzzo. I mean, he's played enough games this year that he's not a liability on defense. But I think for them to have the best chance to advance, they want all their veteran guys in there.
Yeah, Bortuzzo's a depth guy with some toughness.
Yeah,
that's what he brings to the table. I mean, so it is interesting. Scuderi, you bring up a good point with Scuderi. Actually, when they signed Scuderi, I thought it was a brilliant move, because that seemed like a team that needed a locker room player like him back. What we had seen in LA with him was really solid, and yet, I don't know. I mean, in the first round, we didn't see him or anybody step up to stop the bleeding or get the team to play when they had leads or anything like that. It just doesn't seem like Russ. It didn't seem like that. That they have that in their MO right now.
Maybe not this second. Maybe Columbus didn't bring it all out of them. I think the Rangers will. I think, let's just say, for argument's sake, the Rangers go with Carcillo in this game. I think that will bring that out of them right away. And I think even some of the defensemen on the Rangers, I mean, let's face it, McDonough, when he's pushing everybody and fighting them for position, guys get edgy with him. We saw him and Jason Aitken was really, they were jawing in between whistles and when their camera was off. They really didn't like each other. I think McDonough does bring that out. Girardi's sort of like, a nondescript guy who plays great defense and blocks shots, so they, opponents don't get that pissed off at him, but they get mad at McDonough, and I think that will also play into it. And let's face it, St. Louis, he can get under anybody's skin.
Yeah, he really can, and he was good.
He was.
Nash, not so much. I mean, Nash, honestly, he played well in Game 7, but just well. He played.
Yeah.
He just kind of showed up, but in other games he didn't even show up. I mean, And where does Carcillo fall in the list of 100 greatest, Russ? Just curious about that.
About 175.
Okay, yeah, I figured that was about right. Climbing the charts, though, with a bullet.
Nash, I could tell you about Nash.
Yeah.
What I noticed about him, because we've all seen him since his rookie year, and he's a great guy who might lack a killer instinct. And the Rangers, as a team, seem to lack that killer instinct. But he's also lacking that first step now too, and he seems to be hell-bent on showing the world that he could still finesse past 2 or 3 guys, get to the net, and score, rather than just shooting his terrific shot. Probably got the best, hardest shot on the team. Doesn't seem to want to do that. Seems to want to do the Rick Nash moves of old, and it's just sort of like I don't see that extra burst. He had it at the beginning of the year where he had, before the Team Canada announcement, he went on a little tear, and that's about the best Rick Nash we've seen all year. Remember, all year he only had 13 assists. And that's really, his not only his low, but for a guy of his stature, even missing a few games, he played like 65 games, 39 points. Come on.
That's a lot of money per assist. That's all I can say.
It really is.
That's a heck of a lot of money. I mean, that's like something like $70,000 per assist or something. I mean, ridiculous when you think about it. Let's move on to last night's game a little bit before we jump onto the other games tonight.
Can I ask Russ one quick question, Nick? Just off the playoff page with the Rangers. I mean, we don't know if they're going to win this series or lose this series. But Brad Richards, I think, was arguably their best player in the first round. In the summer, they have one compliance buyout left, and the speculation is that they may use it on Richards. Do you think how he plays in this playoffs is going to affect their decision? Because this is the last chance that they want to wipe the last 6 years of that deal off the books that they would have to do it.
Unless he were to win the Stanley Cup and become the Conn Smythe again, I think he's going to get amnestied. It's just sort of cap suicide, and I don't think his performance is going to even matter at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense. So Montreal-Boston last night. I thought that Montreal might take one of the first 2 games. I really didn't think they would take game 1 after having 9 days off.
Yeah.
What do you think, Russ?
Oh, that's impressive. I was amazed at the way they played. I don't know. It seems the Bruins seem to be this team that takes a while to get going. They don't seem to play a great game 1 in any of these series, and I just kind of wonder if they have to sort of get into it. And it's a terrible thing to say because we all think they're going to be the team from the East in the Stanley Cup, or at least most of us think that.
Yeah.
They just seem to be slow starters in this year's playoffs.
They really do, and it's almost like they're bored at the same time, and they also have a sense of it's a weird cocky confidence that they're okay going down a game. It doesn't seem to really matter to them. That's what I kind of get out of it. But Montreal, they're doing it with mirrors for me, Mike. I don't see how this team is where they are. They're 5-0 in the playoffs. I mean, think about it. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I don't count anything about the Tampa Bay series because Lindbach to me is an AHL goalie right now, and they should have sweep that team with their injuries and with their goaltending situation. But as for Montreal, I mean, they're feeding into my narrative that this is going to be a long series. I mean, the one thing that I noticed last night is Boston, at least during the first 3 periods, were more disciplined than I thought they were going to be because Montreal inherently gets underneath their skin. Guys like Gallagher and Pacioretty and Subban really going to get underneath their skin. But in the overtime, they took 2 penalties. The first one at the end of the first overtime didn't cost them, but the second one right off the faceoff ended up as the Subban game winner. And for them to win this series, they're going to have to curb that urge to just pound Brendan Gallagher in the mouth. Which it's tough to do, but if they stay disciplined, I think eventually their depth and talent will win out. But Carey Price played a phenomenal game, and if Montreal gets that kind of goaltending, this series is going 7.
Yeah, Price was great. Remember on that Iginla shot? What was it, like a forehand backhand? That was. I thought it was going to be a goal. I thought that was a game winner.
Yeah, he was really good, and he's continued his. I mean, this has been one of his best overall years when you think about what he's done. And just the fact that the guy wins the gold in Sochi as well, he was really impressive. The Canadiens, though, when you look at their top lines, I mean, there's just not a whole lot there. Plekanec, I am not a big Plekanec fan. Like a lot of people are in, he's just he's probably their best player, right? But I just think that, or arguably, I guess, but I still think he's like a second or third liner in my book, and I don't. I don't know, Russ. What are your thoughts on their lineup there?
Yeah, I still think Vanek's probably their biggest threat. Pacioretty definitely in the crease. I'm not a big Plekanec fan either. I just think he's soft as tissue paper and does disappear.
Mm-hmm.
All that said, Montreal is exceeding what I thought they would do at this point, but like Mike said, Lindback was pretty horrible. I want to give it a couple games because I do believe Boston will bounce back. And look, Galchenyuk hasn't even been a huge factor. Like I think he's still going to be in his career, so maybe he'll step up. I still had a feeling this series might go 7 just because of the hatred, though, to be honest.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think I'd like to see it, and I think if we've knocked Boston out, then the Eastern Conference is wide open at that point. You know, who the heck gets through? Because I mean, I honestly think that the Rangers are a much better chance to knock off the Bruins. You kind of want the Rangers to get through, I think, than the Penguins.
That would be an exciting series.
Right, that would be amazing.
Well, no, I mean, one thing, you look at Montreal, I mean, Vanek has traditionally been a very good performer when he was with the Sabres against the Bruins. There are certain players that just play well against certain teams, and Vanek has always played well against the Bruins. And Eck, as you know, a guy like Briere is a playoff performer. Brian Giunta is a pretty decent playoff performer.
Briere played 11 minutes last night. I mean, 11 minutes in a double overtime game, and I mean, I don't want to be on the Briere bandwagon or whatever, and I know people get sick of me saying it, but honestly, when you watch the guy play in overtime, he created opportunities on every shift, even though he only had 3 shifts in both overtimes.
Well, Vanek only played 19 minutes. I mean, and there's speculation that there might be an injury.
It wasn't an injury. I talked to some people there, and it was basically Therrien sort of panicked on both of them defensively. Like they made some defensive errors early in the game. And then he just benched him. Basically, that's what happened. And
does some weird moves in game, and it wouldn't shock me if at some point it does cost him. Julian's a little more level-headed than Terry, and Terry can really. You don't have to do much to get benched.
No, you don't. And I mean, I think that's just another one of when you go down the checklist of all the things that Boston has over Montreal. Its coaching is at the top of it. And then also, and goaltending is the only, that's the even, Price give it to Montreal, but beyond that, geez, player for player. I mean, there were points in the third period where Boston just dominated them, too. There were spots when you could just see that, you could see what maybe you'll see what you're talking about, Russ, later in the series. Maybe we'll see that because they were starting to warm up to the task. When they were behind 4-3 there, they just poured it on. So.
One thing that I think will be a factor, and it's similar to the series against Detroit. Game 1, it was a 1-0 game. Datsuk got the only goal, and he really didn't pick up on the fact that Boston was imposing their physical will on Detroit. And then Game 2, they bowled over them like a Mack truck. And I think that's what's going to happen in Game 2. You're going to see Lucic, you're going to see Thornton, you're going to see the more physical players on the Bruins stepping up the physical game. Now, the thing is that with that, you risk taking more penalties. They can't get out of control. But I think that they have to play Boston Bruins hockey to beat the Canadiens, and that's what we'll probably see in Game 2.
Yeah. So speaking of what feel like mismatches, the other series that goes on tonight is another one where you look at every category and you have to think Chicago is ahead of Minnesota. I've been tracking the Harding thing very close. That there's a little murmurs I'm hearing out of there that Harding could be back at some point in the series. That would be huge for them, obviously. The Wild, Russ, to me, are the New Jersey Devils of the Western Conference. And while people want to sit there and say that that they can't beat Chicago, we've seen the Devils play against top teams when they weren't necessarily the greatest team, but they beat them. That's why the Wild are really dangerous, Russ.
They're definitely dangerous. I do feel like they got a big break, though, with the dirty hit by Matt Cook. I mean, I'm not even sure they'd be in this round if that didn't happen. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't. But all that said, their defense is pretty great. And Ryan Suter, again, how is he not on the Norris list?
I know.
He averaged 30 minutes. I didn't vote this year, and I'm sort of glad that they passed me over this year and will put me back on next year. Because when I saw that he wasn't on it, I didn't get it. Because I get we don't watch a lot of Minnesota games, but the ones you watch, you have to see what he is worth to that team, and he is worth everything. I mean, you can go look at advanced stats, all kinds of stats. I mean, he really makes that team tick in a lot of ways. But again, Granlund's starting to come on. Parisi's starting to play better. Molson's certainly dangerous, and you always find him in scoring areas. If they get decent goaltending, I could definitely see them putting a scare into the Blackhawks. I really don't see them beating them, but I could see it going 6.
Yeah, I can see that too, and but like it's obviously if they get decent goaltending is a big factor because is Brizgalov the goalie tonight? Is that what's happening? I mean, honestly, it's insane. I mean, the fact when Brizgalov, it was one of the weirdest things we've seen in years. I thought Brizgalov going into overtime for that team, and that team having no confidence in him whatsoever, but played unbelievable. He only gave one shot from which was I think beyond the blue line. And that play, like to your point, Russ, that play Suter made about 30 seconds before they scored the winning goal in overtime, that was the game. That's where they won it. Mike, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, the Wild are like the Devils with Hardy Astrom in goal. That's my comparison. I mean, if Brizgalov has to play any more than a couple games, this series is going to go, probably 5. If they can get Harding back or if Kemper, I haven't heard the severity of the injury, so I don't know if it's possible for him to come back in the series. But he played very well against Colorado and gave them a chance to win. But Brizgalov, I just, the 2 games that he played, I thought he was average at best, and actually I think he cost him that first game because he let that late goal. I think it was Paul Stastny had scored the late goal in regulation and then the goal in overtime. So, if it's Brizgalov, it's going to be a very short series. But you can't take anything away from the Wild. They played great. I don't think a lot of people expected them to beat Colorado, but without a good goaltender, they don't stand really a chance against the Blackhawks.
Who's the Wild's goalie coach? Maybe you suit him up.
Yeah, right. They've got to have somebody else there. Maybe Suter can play goal.
There you go.
Probably can, Probably would be just as good as Brizgalov. Although, this is the thing about Briz. He could turn around and just shut out Chicago tonight. Like, it could be he's the kind of goalie that you really have to throw your hands up in the air with him. You have no idea what you're getting. And he's the kind of goalie that when he gets hot, he's really good until he lets up a goal. Often. I mean, that's his game, right, Russ? We've seen this for years.
No, we have. I could see it being a situation, though, where Minnesota's defense is playing a great game because they know they have to compensate, like you were talking about, and Bruce doesn't face that many shots, and then all of a sudden the shots he faces, he does let some in. I could see that happening. I could see, like, maybe that first period, him only getting, like, 5 shots on goal, and that would be bad for him.
Yeah, that would be bad because he does like to see the puck. We talked about this a little bit, Russ, the other night in the press box. I do believe that this is the best Chicago team so far. Are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I am, because the depth. I mean, you got guys like Bickle and Leddy and Kruger. These guys were all watching the Stanley Cup the last time, and now they're all playing pivotal parts. I just think it's an amazing thing where Chicago can still continue to put guys from the organization into the starting lineup with the core that they have.
Yeah.
And, Marion Hossa is getting older, but this guy, the puck still follows him. It's amazing.
I know. If you were to put odds, Mike, on a Chicago-Boston final, where would you put them?
Well, I think Chicago's going to have, if LA gets by Anaheim, Chicago-LA a second time around, the way Quick has played the last 4 games of the series against San Jose, I think it's 50-50 that it's Boston-LA or Boston-Chicago. I don't think Chicago is guaranteed to be the representative in the West because I think LA convinced me because they, after the first 3 games, I thought they were dead, and they rose like Lazarus from the grave, and Jonathan Quick was, ridiculous in the last couple games. If he plays like that, they get by Anaheim, and I think they give Chicago a run for their money.
They rose like a phoenix from the ashes.
There you go.
Russ, give us your metaphor on something rising. What would
3-1 odds.
3-1 odds? All right, I like that. I think that's about right. I do. Maybe not quite as strong as Chrome is for the Kentucky Derby, but pretty close, getting there. It seems like we're destined to another Stanley Cup final between those 2 teams.
And won't you be excited, Eck?
I'm not a Chicago fan, obviously, but I mean that's the only thing. I mean, Boston's a great place to go. They're both awesome places to go. I mean, you can't. But Minnesota would be fun. I mean, Minnesota would be because I haven't done that. I've done a Stanley Cup final in the other 3. So
Minnesota's got a great building. That's maybe the best building in the league.
Yeah, and a great mall. And since we're all from New Jersey, we have to like malls.
Orange Julius.
Right, and Prairie Home Companion, which is one of my favorite things of all time. So if I could see a Prairie Home Companion live, that would be worth it for me. So we'll leave it there. We're off to the really, Russ. Thanks so much for jumping in today. I really appreciate it. We're gonna have you back a lot, and when we get close to the draft, more often.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Have a great weekend, guys. Enjoy the games. It's going to be a lot of fun. I guess we should probably actually, you know what? We should talk about San Jose. We should talk about St. Louis. It's Friday. Sorry, LA. We should talk about LA briefly here because we aren't going to have another podcast. That's my fault. So let's do that. LA Anaheim. Russ, what are your thoughts?
I do like the Kings over Anaheim. They've gotten through the wars now, and I think Boudreau has sort of screwed around with his team a little bit. Yeah. You saw Anderson sort of lose his temper when he got pulled and he broke a table, and I'm not sure he should be in the position he's in, so he's been sort of toyed with. Solani was toyed with. While they have a great team, they really do, and they have a lot of toughness, LA can match them in a lot of ways, and they have better goaltending, and they have the battle-tested goalie. So I do like the Kings to win it. I think it'll be a long series. I think it'll be in 7, but I do think the Kings can win it.
Yeah, and so far, the teams with goalies that break tables in the finals are 1-6. So we'll see. I love this. That my wife has a name for this. And I don't know. She hates. Teams leading after 1 and teams leading after 3 and after 2 and all this. The first goal scored by in the 7th game by a team that was settled by the Puritans is never Anyway, so Mike, your thoughts on Anaheim, LA?
Well, if Frederick Anderson breaking a table, he must be a member of the WWE. But no, I honestly think that that Boudreau played a game with the 2 goaltenders. I think he's probably going to start this series with Hiller. Getzlaf and Perry, and Getzlaf missed a game or 2 in the first series with an unknown injury after Roussel started punching him in the face. I don't think he liked it too much. I just think that they didn't get a lot of production out of guys like Cam Fowler. It was sort of an uneven performance against a Dallas team that I think if they would have been playing anybody else, they probably would have lost that series. But they were able to get by Dallas because they're not fully along in their development. I think LA is on a roll right now after taking the last 4 games against San Jose, and they're getting great performances out of the guys that they have to in Dustin Brown and Kopitar. Gabourik's actually performing pretty well, so I think it'll be the Kings in 6.
Yeah, it's hard to go against the Kings right now. I mean, hard to go against Jonathan Quick right now. Basically, I mean, he's the reason that they're where they are. It'll be a fun time on Manhattan Beach for the next couple weeks. I just wonder about the bars, and it's going to be interesting because it is a weird hockey vibe down there. It was the strangest thing going to the finals for that. But because Kings fans and Ducks fans are totally different. Mm-hmm. I kind of compare it to Flyers and Devils fans in a way because you have the old school fans and then the new school fans, and the Devils and Ducks have similarities in that they don't really get the respect that they deserve, and they're sort of about the same distance away from each other. It feels like, even though the Ducks are closer, but it takes twice as long to get there. So I think that I can see LA. I think it's in LA. I think it's LA's series to lose for sure. But well, that's all the time we have for today, and thanks very much. I apologize for going a little bit longer. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey, guys. See you soon.